This is gonna quasi be a bit video response to Rage Against the Clampdown, although not really. Um, I'm really sorry about this, Rage. You posted like a 2-hour response to me, and I think that's cool. I make rambling videos. I make a lot of videos. I like watching long videos. I can't watch that right now. Uh, I'm working way too much, and I've just not had the internet to spend 2 hours doing that. So. I have not even clicked on that. I saw that you sent it. I think I approved it. If I didn't, let me know. I'll approve it. Um, and so I guess this isn't a true video response. But this is going to touch on a topic that you made a subsequent, I think like a 9-minute video, basically quoting a Roderick Long article at length. And of course, I didn't have time even to listen to all that. I think I watched the first minute. And you did touch on an interesting topic. And I don't want to say it's a straw man, but I think it's. Well, let me just say you took objection to a comment I had made, or maybe a comment I either made in comments or in my video where I said, look, left libertarians, at least some of them, are always talking about, worker owned this and worker owned that, and I said, I quibbed that I don't think that's very likely to happen, and that their emphasis on this seems misplaced or very weird. Of course, I also said if workers want to own factories, obviously it's a free market. They're free to try, and if they succeed, awesome. And if they don't, so well. And this was taken to mean that I was saying that it was impossible or that I didn't understand. And the Roderick article, as far as I saw it, was basically saying that the idea that we'd have a radically different, basically a radically different arrangement of the economy, basically went along the lines of, look, we have big corporations now, but they're subsidized by the state, and so if we got rid of the state, things would be different. And I agree with that entirely. I think it's obvious that the government subsidizes and also restricts all sorts of things. And it's not a uniform pattern of what they do when they don't. And it's obvious that, yeah, some firms are heavily subsidized and some aren't. Some are restricted and some aren't. And it's obvious to everybody that the structure of production and the arrangement of capital will be different in a stateless society. But that doesn't mean that we can then prescribe that it will be this or that. I can say, well, absent a state, then everything will be run by cats. Is there any evidence of that? No. Just because the state isn't currently subsidizing cats doesn't mean they will now predominate. And I don't think that worker-owned factories are as absurd as cats. Not even close to that. So maybe that was a bad example. But just to simply say that we have big hierarchical corporations now, they're being subsidized by the state. Hence, if the state's gone, they'll be gone too, or at least reduced to some degree. It doesn't necessarily follow. Predicting what the market is going to be like in a market economy is really impossible. And this is even on real basic things like how much people are going to demand ham sandwiches. We don't know how much they're going to demand ham sandwiches now with a state. We certainly don't know how much they're going to demand without a state. We don't know what kinds of structures of production now are going to exist in the future absent a state or with a state. We just don't know because we don't know all the variables. And we never will, as far as I can tell. This does touch, though, on an interesting... There is sort of a tendency within a lot of libertarian circles to lionize certain segments of the economy in a way that is not normative, at least. And I think the most clear examples of this is with objectivism and with Ayn Rand, who took, and I remember Lou Rockwell said it once, she really emphasized the producers, the entrepreneurs, those capitalists. And he said she's got a half right, but the other half is without absent consumers, we have no way to, the capitalists have no foundation for their success. They don't even know what success would be. It's not enough to think of something that is brilliant you have to produce it, and you have to produce it in a way that people are willing to pay for it, and something that they want, even if it's brilliant in your own eyes. If they think it's shit, then it's shit. And there is a tendency, especially among objectivists, but among other libertarians too, to kind of lionize that in a way that's inappropriate. And certainly the naysayers of libertarianism use this as kind of a rhetorical club that, oh, we're all for the rich guy and we're against the little guy. And in the political discourse, a lot of libertarians will, you know, take up the defense of the big guy, but that doesn't mean that they're saying that they think that that's the way it ought to be or that's the way it's going to be. Although I guess some of them think that. We don't know, and you don't know either. Maybe later in that article, Roderick Long explained how he knew that that was going to be the case, but I rather doubt it. The state, what's going to determine what kind of production there is going to be supply and demand, and what consumers want, and what the labor market demands, and we don't know what that's going to be. But the arrangement that you're talking about, I think, is very unlikely to proliferate for a couple of reasons. Most people are very risk averse. That's basically true. They've done studies where once people own things, once people have property, whether it's money or whatever, they're very unlikely to risk it without a very, very high certainty of return. There are exceptions, there are gamblers and that sort of thing. However, to be an entrepreneur, which even these collective things would have to be, requires risk-taking, and usually a certain high degree of risk-taking. And most people are very reluctant to do that. They're capable if you force them. People will take risks if they have no other choice, but most people don't. And I certainly fall into that category. When I earn money, I like to save it, and I would be very, very reluctant to take, say, all my gold and silver and start betting it on, you know, investing it in a company. I work in a company where I have enough money invested. I have enough personal savings that I could start doing what I do. I could afford all the capital that I need to start what I do, and I am not anywhere close to even considering doing that because it's that risky. I have a boss. He does do that. He buys all the equipment and he takes the risk, and I don't really shoulder much of that risk. I shoulder some of it because if he fails, I'll have to find another job. But I won't be out all of my gold and silver. He will. He'll be out of all his gold and silver or whatever it is that he's invested in the company. And so there's only a few people who are willing to do that. On top of those people, though, you have to be successful at it. And so there are people who are willing to risk it, to risk being entrepreneurs, and most of them are going to fail to one degree or another, in which case they will have to, their capital will be lost to somebody else. Not forever, it won't be gone. That's a misnomer. It's someone else that will go into the control of others, and they'll have to either reaccumulate it somehow, or, you know, they'll have to take a step back. And so most people are and I don't know what percentage, but most people are willing to say, look, yes, the rewards are higher if you're a capitalist, but I'd rather risk less, get a lower rate of return, and then just invest my labor. But when you do that, you can't expect to control. Like, if my boss invests $100,000 in a company, and then I say, well, I'm not going to invest anything in the company, but I want to have equal say with you, or, you know, almost as much say as you, that I don't see how that's ethical, for one, but I also think it's infinitely, or very, very impractical. That would just eliminate his it would eliminate or not eliminate, but it would greatly reduce his incentive to ever do that, because he would be taking this great risk with all of his money, his capital, and then he'd be told, but your hands are tied, and you're going to have to do what your employees say, even though they don't really have as much skin in the game as do you. Which isn't to say they don't have none, and it's not to say that employees would have nothing worth saying. I give my boss advice a lot, and a lot of times I wish he had taken it. And a number of times he's had to come back later and say, oh, whoops, yeah, it would have been better. But that doesn't mean I'm willing to take my gold and silver. And you know, if he came to me and said, hey, I want to expand, would you become a partner? I would tell him flat out no. At least right now. If I had a lot more money, I might start saying, okay, well, maybe a little bit. Maybe 10% of what I have. In the meantime, I'm happy just to exchange. And so he takes all the risks. I get some of the rewards for he doesn't take all the risks. He takes most of the risk. I take a set share of the rewards. And I actually don't think he's taking home that much. But this is just an example. I don't think that it is state subsidy that guarantees or promotes that. I think that state subsidy is like a scattershot. It's supporting this or that industry, and it's not always big industries. Here in West Virginia and a lot of small towns, it's really consumer demand is thwarted not by big business but by little municipalities that have decided they want to keep like their old town character, and they zone it so that the properties in the town are all tiny because they were built in like the 19th century or even earlier in some places, and they want to retain that. And so you don't have Walmarts and you don't have gas stations that fit more than just a tiny little lot. And all the buildings are old and made out of brick and stone, and there's a certain quaintness to that. But you know, sometimes you really want to get a tank of gas, and it's hard because there are no gas stations because the city has outlawed it. And that's not a subsidy to big corporations in that case. That's often a combination of small businesses saying we don't want to have this competition, often explicitly the case, and a combination of that and just a conservative bias of the city fathers who control the government in the city, that municipality, just like it to be a certain way, and so they legislate it, and we all suffer a little bit for it. I mean, maybe some people like it and some people don't, but I think if somebody wants, and I'm sure we agree, that if somebody becomes the owner of an old brick building, that they should be able to, if they want, demolish it and build something newer. And this is an example where the government intervention into the economy is not clearly one for big business. I'm sure we can find examples where it is and examples where it's not. And so what would that mean? There's nothing, I don't think, there's nothing in libertarianism or economics that would suggest that all firms will become centralized and huge, and there are reasons to expect that they can't get that you know, they can only grow so big before they do become inefficient. That's the whole socialist economic calculation problem applied to firms, not just to states. That I don't know if Roderick talked about that in the article you read because I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I'm certainly familiar with that, and that's something that's been put out there by right libertarians for quite a while now. If you read Rothbard, he does say, you know, we don't know. There's nothing that says that and you talked about this reading the Roderick Long article about, oh, you know, sometimes economy of scales aren't the best. Yeah, I agree, but that doesn't mean that worker ownership is going to be enhanced. That just means that there's going to be a lot of markets, at least some of the time, where more localized, smaller production makes the most economic sense. But we can't predict where and when and how often, let alone how those firms will be organized. So I don't know if it's a straw man or not. It's an interesting topic, but one that's a little bit superfluous. And I don't know. I don't feel like I'm telling people that they have to have a certain kind of structure in their businesses. I'm saying that I think a certain kind is likely just because of the incentives most people have. Most people are not willing to take their life savings and put it into a business that might fail, that has a good chance of failing. They would rather take a smaller rate of return for more security. And for those who are willing to do that, many of them will fail. And so, I mean, someone put it to me this way: so what if we had a factory with 10 people, or a certain number of people, and we said, hey, the factory, this is your wage, but your share of the profits. But in order for this factory to be competitive, we're going to need new equipment, and your share of the cost is $200,000. This may have even occurred in a comment with one of your videos. there aren't that many people who are willing to do that. And they're not wrong, by the way. There's nothing wrong with saying, look, I've worked hard, I want to retain this, I don't want to risk it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a wage slave. You shouldn't be forced to be a wage slave, but there aren't many people willing to do that, and so there's going to be a minority of people who are willing and able at any given point, which is not some inherent thing that they're inherently able. They're getting it right for a time. A lot of entrepreneurs get it right, and then they get it wrong. And a lot of people are wage laborers for a long time, and then they become entrepreneurs. So it's not like a class of separate humanoids. It's an economic activity. But it's something that at any given point most people are not willing to engage in, and so you're going to have a little hierarchy. And why is that bad as long as it's voluntary? I'm not saying that you can't have firms like that. And this is kind of what I don't understand. I freely admit people should be able to organize any way they want. They should have voluntary unions and voluntary cooperatives, and yet that's not good enough. I have to conclude that that they're going to predominate, that they're going to take over, that they're going to grow. And maybe they will, but I kind of doubt it. But that's not good enough. I should want that all to happen. And if I don't, then I'm derelict in some way. And I just don't see it. And then the whole emphasis, why there's so much emphasis on something that's really unknowable, you know, it bugs me. I guess it's not that terrible of a sin to have, be guilty of, but if that's even the word. But yeah, we don't know what the structure of production is going to be in any at all. I mean, even if we assumed that all of them were going to be collectively owned by workers, we wouldn't know what the structure of production was going to be like. And even if we assumed they were all going to be hierarchical, we wouldn't know. And again, why is hierarchy bad if it's voluntary? Because it just is, because it correlates with the state. Yeah, a lot of things correlate with the state. So that's not strong enough. I guess maybe the long article talked about this. So I also had a couple of people comment on my video that everything I said was a straw man. I don't know, maybe to some. This is the problem whenever you have a debate, is you'll come out and you'll say something and it applies to some people and then not other people, and so the people who it doesn't apply to come out and say, well, you're strongman in my position. Well, maybe that's not your position, but it's somebody's position. Somebody's down liking my videos. You know, somebody disagrees. Somebody thought this should make a 2-hour video. So if the whole thing was just wrong and it was a straw man, then I don't know what was needed to make a 2-hour video for. You could have just said it in 4. Now that wasn't Rage Against the Clampdown who said that, so you know, no fault on him. But 2 hours, man. I don't know when I'll ever get to watch that. But if I do, you know, maybe I'll respond. But honestly, I doubt it. I doubt it. And I don't see why this is something that we need to think of as normative at all. And if it's not normative, why should we care how likely it is? You know, we might find it interesting, and I wouldn't have any problem with someone saying, hey, I think it's going to be really common. But that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it should be common, and it's wrong that we have hierarchy. And the businesses we have now, they would not exist absent the state, and I don't think so. Certain industries surely are subsidized and would be radically different. I actually think that we'd have a lot less road travel. Not because I don't think the free market can handle roads, just because I don't think that that's not a solution that I think is often the best, and it's just something that the government just loves to subsidize like crazy and waste enormous amounts of resources in the process. And I think we'd see something a little bit different without it. And I would speculate what that would be, but I wouldn't really know. And, you know, that's just one example. I'm sure there could be many. So, anyway, this ain't 2 hours. It's not short either, so I do apologize for that. But that's pretty much it. All right, bye-bye.